Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Lightfoot, an academic English lecturer in the Vantage 1 program at UBC, and I would just like to briefly introduce you to a project that I worked on with a few of my wonderful colleagues, investigating the effects of reducing linguistic complexity in first-year undergraduate assessments. To first give you a sense of what we mean by linguistic complexity, let's take a look at this multiple choice question. This question asks, multiple choice questions, MCQs, used for formative and summative assessment of students' cognitive knowledge in undergraduate higher education course tests, tend to contain highly complex linguistic features, which may result in a difficulty for instructors to provide feedback in a timely manner, b, many instructors choosing not to include multiple choice questions in their examinations, or C, potential confusion among students during the reading comprehension stage of answering test questions. If you answered C, that these questions can cause confusion for our students, you are definitely correct. Looking at this multiple choice question, we can see that the way that it is worded does not exactly make it easy to understand. Now imagine that you are a first-year student or a student whose first language is not even English. Multiple choice questions are a commonly used assessment tool in university courses, but the wording of these questions can often be confusing for students and unintentionally testing reading comprehension rather than the actual content of the question itself. So let's take a look at why this question is confusing. Let's zoom in to the stem of this question. This question's stem is very lexically dense, and what I mean by that is that it is packed with many different ideas. I can see 5 big ideas right away, and each of these ideas could be broken down even further themselves. This type of writing, when we pack many ideas into fewer sentences, reflects common university discourse, but it may not be the best way to assess our students' knowledge of course concepts. So, how can we simplify this question without losing its content? This is the puzzle that we are motivated by. Academic writing is generally linguistically complex. But if this complex language is above the proficiency level of our students, it can be confusing for them and actually lead to lower test scores. So if we want to break down this complex language in our assessments to help ensure that we are testing course content rather than our students' academic reading ability, we will first need to take a look at how a question becomes linguistically complex. We see this particularly in noun groups, so those big ideas in our sentences. If we think back to that multiple choice question, we can see many different noun groups. All of these are big ideas on their own, with packed meaning in each one. For example, if we think of knowledge as one noun group on its own, perhaps some clear ideas come to mind. The idea of knowing. But then what happens when we use students' knowledge? And then what about students' cognitive knowledge? By packing more information into one noun group, the meaning becomes more abstract and less explicit for the reader. And then, in this example, we can actually see one extremely large noun group at the beginning, with the second, third, and fourth noun groups actually describing the first noun group multiple choice questions, packed into one big noun group underlined here. This type of writing makes the idea more abstract and a little more difficult to initially comprehend. Along with the difficulty of understanding these complex packed ideas, students face additional challenges of trying to decipher difficult vocabulary. Obviously, the greater the amount of unfamiliar vocabulary, the more reading comprehension difficulties students will face. So if we were to try and break down our original multiple choice question stem, trying to think of one big idea at a time, we might reword it like this. Multiple choice questions are often used as assessments in undergraduate higher education courses and are used to assess how well students have understood information throughout a course as well as at the end of a course. Many MCQs are written in a complex way. This complex language may result in. Hopefully you can see here how the wording of the question has been unpacked and more accessible vocabulary is used, hopefully making it easier for the reader to understand, but still keeping the content of the question the same, and therefore not giving away the answer. In a minority of test items, we might also find some cultural references. We want to keep in mind that not all students know about the Vancouver Canucks, or even the rules of hockey for that matter. Here is an example of a question we reworded in our project that focused on beavers, a well-known animal in Canada, but perhaps not all over the world. So all in all, we wanted to keep the content of the test questions the same, but change the wording of the questions to be more straightforward and accessible to all students, and see whether this would help students be able to better demonstrate their content knowledge. Our results say yes, using these strategies to make multiple choice questions more accessible increases students' ability to demonstrate their content knowledge. On average, students were 6% more likely to answer an unpacked question correctly when compared to questions that were worded in a more complex way. Now the question might arise as to what constitutes a meaningful change in student test performance. Some might question whether or not a 6% improvement is worth all of the additional resources required to unpack test items. In the context of our Vantage 1 program, teaching first-year international students who use English as an additional language, making test questions more accessible is highly valued. And we think this would be worthwhile in many other contexts as well. Hopefully, with the information in this workshop, along with the additional help from our research assistants, you will see how this can also be feasible in your context as well. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the workshop.